done right. 94.4 Spice
After 7 o'clock, and this is the Situation Room. It's the second hour of our conversation as we get into some of the things that we'll be discussing this morning. And we're going to be looking at, as our Justice Thursday conversation, into the human cost of justice in Kenya. And across board, there are very, very many examples currently in this sphere. We'll talk about that with Grace Wangeshi, who's the Executive Director of the Independent Medical Legal Unit. Good morning, Grace.
Good morning.
How are you?
Very well, thank you.
Karibu sana.
Asante.
And thank you for coming and having this conversation with us today, because there seem to be a number of things, and we're looking for the space in between. Okay, so what does justice actually look like? And so those are the conversations we have this morning. To welcome you to the hot seat, Dennis is going to share today's proverb, and we'd like to hear your interpretation of it.
So we are just within the East Africa community, and a country whose capital is known as Gitega. You know that country?
Yes.
Gitega. Formerly known as Bujumbura.
Burundi.
Burundi, in
Yes,
2019,
yes,
they changed
yes.
their capital to Gitega.
Yeah.
So Burundi are known for their rich cultural heritage when it comes to drumming heritage. And it's actually listed with UNESCO as one of the heritage that supports humanity. And they also have a very rich soil and fertile soil. So they grow, talk about their maize, they talk coffee and tea. And the coffee is actually regarded as being one of the best in the world.
Yes, I know, yes.
Yeah, so our proverb today from this country is also just about love. And the world needs some love sometime, or all the time. Now, where there is love, there is no darkness. How would you interpret that?
Oh, where there's love, there's no darkness. Actually, love is what keeps us going. If you're surrounded by people that love you, if there's love in our country, that we care about each other, if there's love in the way we do things, we'll do them to perfection in the best way possible. It means there can never be a dark day. You're happy. I mean, it's. Your face brightens. Your life is bright. So, I think it's a beautiful proverb.
And it's beautiful.
Yes.
And there's someone seated on your left, Mr. Sentimental.
Why are you putting me on the spot here?
Well, Cesar, over the last number of years, the questions about justice and how it actually is delivered then come front and center, and they're rife, and we start to wonder what exactly then justice looks like, and then whether it is a level playing field for everybody who then is either citizen, resident of this country. And most recently, then we've had to ask some serious questions about what it is. But before we get into that, we would like to get a little bit of knowledge and understanding into the work that IMLU does into these circles. Then it would, I guess, ground us to then be able to have this conversation. So maybe you can do that for us.
Right. Thank you. Thank you for having me. IMLU is Independent Medical Legal Unit. We are the agency that works around enforced disappearances, extrajudicial killings, torture. Our niche is in forensics documentation of those types of human rights violations. We do work towards a prohibition of torture, but most importantly, ensuring rehabilitation services for survivors, because survivors of torture are some of the most vulnerable groups of people in society, most times forgotten, most times not seen, most times left to struggle by themselves. We do a lot of work around advocating for justice, for healing, and most importantly, holding duty bearers to account. One of our biggest areas of work is around, putting an end to police brutality and ensuring that we can deal with the issue of impunity, which is a big element when it comes to, hindrances towards access to justice.
Yeah.
So IMLU is the go-to organization when it comes to prevention of torture as well as response to torture.
Okay.
Yes.
You mentioned, abductions and forced disappearances. It's one of the issues that actually brought people out again during the protests that happened last week, because we've seen too many people disappear. And unfortunately, some of those have ended up dead.
Yes.
In the last administration, the River Yala stories were very, very prominent. Until today, interestingly enough, there is no recompense in terms of those individuals who showed up floating in the river, and for those who are still missing. There are still 29 people missing in the last 12 months. Nobody knows where they are. Their families are wondering where they are. And Mukuria is in my mind every day, because the images of him being put into a police vehicle on the 25th of June 2024 are still very fresh. And his mother going to every single police station in this city, every hospital morgue, and has not found her son, and is asking questions. He represents he represents other people who have disappeared. The front page of the Standard this morning gives us 5 of those individuals who were abducted, who have been taken.
Yeah.
There's no explanation as to what happened to them. Some of them have been let go, and they never speak again about what happened to them.
Yeah.
Francis Mutunge was held for 24 hours. John Mulingwa held for more than 24 hours. Wajiko Thiga, we still don't know where she is. Mark Amiani held for more than 24 hours. These are all individuals who were taken in the last 2 weeks. And Ndiangui Kinyagia, abducted by the DCI officers and is still missing,
yes.
for whom the court has asked today that he be presented dead or alive at 11 o'clock. This is the story.
Yeah.
These individuals that we are talking about, this is over the last 2 weeks. The 29 and others, we don't know. What's the state of, that's just from me who can look at a picture and tell you, but you've got documented cases of all of these individuals. How bad does it look?
Oh, it looks bad. It feels bad. It's painful. We not only document, but we speak to survivors' families. We speak to victims' families. And being at the forefront of, where the issues are happening. For example, when somebody is found dead, we have to be there to make sure that, yes, number one, this is that person, but most importantly, to find out how did they die. It pains me when we talk numbers, because as you're saying, it's not just numbers. You're seeing the face. You're seeing this person. This is somebody's child. It's somebody's daughter. It's somebody's son. It's somebody's husband. It's somebody's nephew, father, and we've seen families completely destroyed out of these situations and circumstances. So in 2024, that's last year, the total number of those that were disappeared is 89. During the Maandamano period alone, it was 63, but total was 89. Can you imagine what that means? It's really, really painful for those families. And not just for the families, those that have been found and released at some point, they speak of horrific experiences, pain untold, torture that's completely unnecessary. Because why they are tortured is to release information a lot of them don't have. It's to get them to implicate somebody. It's to get them to, divulge things that they really do not even know. And why all this? If you look at the circumstances and a lot of the people that have been arrested, have been abducted, they are said to have stated something or to have done something. When you look at when you follow the stories, it's actually things that that Kenyans are supposed to have said, because you're talking about our right to expression. You're talking about justice. You're talking about democracy. So when you challenge things that are not going well, and I'm not saying they did challenge, I'm just actually saying that people are being abducted for reasons they shouldn't even be, and the law doesn't even allow that. So the situation is bad. families, as you said correctly. I know families that have been destroyed completely, mothers who've lost jobs because they have spent so much time moving between morgue and morgue, all over. And at the end of the day, they're just left in debt, they're left in pain, they're left concerned. And by the way, a lot of those mothers that I've spoken to mothers in Madare. There's a group we call Madare Mothers of Survivors. They say to them, justice simply means closure. For some of them, they just want to know, is my son dead or alive? Just that. And that for them is healing. Others just want somebody to say, I am sorry that this happened. Others want compensation because they're struggling. Others want the person to be apprehended, And it's pushed families to limits you don't even want to think through.
So, Grace, as we talk about these families that do exist and how destroyed they are, just paint a picture in terms of their mental status with the dealing with all this, because it could be like when numbers come, those are statistics and whatnot, but no one really goes deeper to understand what is going on with these families, their mental space. Just how bad is it?
Absolutely. It's bad, as I said. And I like the fact that you've asked that question. Part of our rehabilitation program, which I didn't speak to in details, is offering psychosocial support to families, offering medical support. We offer physiotherapy support for families, people who've been injured and maimed, as well as legal litigation for certain cases. Now, all the survivors, most of the survivors that we engage, we put them through some psychosocial support. And their mental situation is bad. It's really difficult. At first, when we begin, we have a series, we have a professional way of counseling and engaging them. When we begin, most of them are just in tears all through, in pain, denial, anger, frustration, suicidal. It's difficult. It's really painful. But then when you walk through a journey with them, they start healing slowly. But they can't quite heal. A lot of them just want, once they know, and I think the Boniface karaoke case is a good example. The mother, it's been very painful. But when they were told, prepare for closure, and when it wasn't even done in the right way to begin with, but at least she begins getting closure when she knows, okay, my son, now she can deal with the issue. But now these ones who are losing, who don't know where their children are, what are they closing on? Even the psychosocial support, they are still left in a mental state of, am I mourning? Am I just telling myself that my son will never be found? Or am I going to hold on to hope? So it's really, we play around with people's mental state, and this is what is causing frustration in this country. That so many young people are waking up not knowing, will I be the next person?
Okay.
I was in a conversation 2 days ago, and it's really sad that the mental state, even just of a normal Kenyan, is really, we need to be concerned. And I was in a space where people are saying they're actually more afraid of police than they are afraid of guns. Then there are people saying, why would you use guns to manage protests? I'm diverting, but I just want to show you the mental state here. So you've created so much fear in people who are already dealing with pain. Anxiety is a big mental issue. Anxiety amongst the young people, not knowing, will I be the next one? Just one of these people who, and I won't disclose who's missing, actually kept saying, I suspect these people look for me because I know they looked for so-and-so. I know so-and-so is missing. So see the mental state we are keeping people in. It's horrible. It's not a good place to be in.
I mean, Grace, just to drive this conversation a little bit further, because you're speaking to these families and you're talking about the mental state of some of these families. You are sitting where Ibrahim's mother sat last week or so, and she was narrating the story of how the son was shot outside Parliament, how she received the news. And then when we asked her, because Ibrahim had a brother, what are you telling your other son? And she told us that the son wants to go to the street. This was Wednesday's protest. And she was in support because he says, if my brother was killed on the streets, I will not sit at home. I will still fight on. I will still go. When you're speaking to these families, how do they pull back and look at everything that has happened? The children are missing. What is it doing to them?
So it's many different things because it's also very personal. But to a lot of those we have spoken to, a lot of them want to get into the space where they contribute to the realization of whatever cause their son or daughter was looking for. Mm-hmm. So if my son is missing and they know for sure this person is in the hands of government, do you expect them to sit back and watch? Mm-hmm. No, they'll never do that. And what does that do to society? Everybody comes out to support the cause that the young people, and you can see what happened in 2024 when the Gen Zs went into the streets. Right now, it's Gen Zs plus. Kenyans have come up in support of the Gen Zs because you realize that actually they're fighting a good cause. So that is what the families are feeling. I actually have spoken to people who've said, no, I will be on the street. My child did not die in vain. That memory, I'm going to make sure that it lives in us, because unless we see some change, then they'll have died in vain. So there's that building of resilience, building more of support and solidarity with the cause, just wanting to uphold the values this person was pushing for. But there are those others who are really scared, just living, not even scared. I think the word is anxious and some level of what if, what if? Now you go, you're the brother. What if you go and I lose you as well? Where does that leave me?
Where does that leave me?
Yeah.
And if we were to start looking into, data and numbers, I think that's very important. But at the same time, also important for us to understand what people go through when they have been taken. And I remember that just after the protest last year, we reached, and as folks who had been taken, we reached out to some of the people who were released after about 20 days. They were held for that period of time. And one of the gentlemen, I won't say his name, but as a journalist would do, we reached out and we said we would like to have a conversation with you for us to tell us. And he said to me, Ndu, I will never give an interview. I will never talk about what happened to me. I will never speak about that to anybody for nothing. And he didn't have to explain further because it was very clear of the torture that he's going to live with for a very long period of time. So, Grace, you've documented these things. What happens to individuals when they're taken?
Oh, it's many, many different things. As you say, a lot of those who've gone through it will never speak. Some will never speak because they have chosen not to speak. It's too painful for them. It's not something they can live with in terms of, just engaging. There are those who won't speak because they've been threatened and told, dare you speak? And you heard Boniface. He was threatened and told, never, ever speak about these things. But he went out of that and said, I'm going to speak because that's the only power I have. But there are also those that will speak, just like Boniface, and say, you know what? Somebody has to know what is happening so that either I help in preventing it from happening or just for people to know how horrible it is. So we've spoken to many, many different people from the Nyayo chambers, current abductions. And there are a couple of situations that happen. One is the point of arrest. Some you're walking, you're standing outside the shop, and these guys people just comes around you quickly, you're thrown into. Imagine how horrific, scaring that is. You're going around your normal duties, Some have been trailed. And so that point of being abducted is a shock. And then you're put in A lot of them have been blindfolded. A lot of them have been put in dark places. A lot of them have been, they drive around with them for many hours. And then you get into this place, you have no idea where you are. You're denied food. You're denied, you're given probably some little water, no access to, a health break. And then the beating, the torture, the being stripped. It's really, it's not something Kenyans even can talk about. We have documented some of these cases in our report. You'll see some of those stories. Those that wanted to share their story have given that story. We launched a report on the Gen Z protest. And so there are a couple of stories there. It's total pain, both physical, both emotional, both, it's just, you're scared, you're in the dark. By the way, when they blindfold you and they get off the blindfolds, you can't even see. So in terms of adjusting, to the space you are in, it's just, torture is bad. It's bad, and you live with it, and it's humiliating. You're asked questions about your family. They threaten you. They dig into you to such a point of vulnerability that you don't even know who you are anymore. So they tell you, we know where you live, we know your children, we know where they go, we know your spouse, we know. It takes away your dignity. I think that's the best way to put it. It takes away your being, your you. You're no longer you. Someone has seen you completely naked. They have, it's horrible. I mean, I can't describe torture because it's just too much.
But Grace, if we go the medical way, because abductees who've managed to quote unquote escape, or some have been dumped in bushes, reported having been forcibly injected with drugs, or their food and drink laced with drugs. Are this documented, and what are the effects of these drugs that they've ingested during the time when they've been tortured? Have you had those cases?
That's an area, a growing area of our work. We have done a couple of toxicology tests just to find out, whether they were injected with the drugs and what the effects are. Unfortunately, most of these tests are done outside, and a few spaces here or service providers. There are issues of integrity, so you don't just want to have these tests done anywhere. But we have some good partners. We don't have conclusive reports yet of those. There's one key report we are awaiting. And that will give us probably an indication of what drugs have been used and what effect. I think actually we should be getting that report anytime this week. But the main documentation and a lot of the documentation we've done is around the medical injuries themselves, psychosocial, the mental, the condition of the person, as well as the autopsies and postmortem reports. So toxicology is it's a growing area of our work. We were not doing that, almost regularly. We had select cases, but increasingly it's becoming an area we have to invest in. Expensive, but it has to be done.
Let's take a break at this point, because then we want to come back, and we're doing a lot of work around the torture and the disappearances, a lot of work around it. But then folks are saying, what are we going to do to stop it?
Right.
What conversations are we having around saying that it can no longer be used as a tool for control by whomever? Because we've documented, we have the numbers, we have the eyewitness reports, we have the testimonials, but then when is it going to stop?
Exactly.
So let's go into some of those conversations when we come back from this break. Grace Wangeshi is the Executive Director of the Independent Medical Legal Unit. The human cost of justice in Kenya is the conversation we're having. It's 28 minutes to 8. We'll be back after this.
This is The Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
Dial *811*800# to get this as your skiza tune. KTN, ndio home.
In the next episode, we're looking at the cuisines, how China is tapping in the culinary space from the villages all the way to international market.
One of the experiences is a restaurant where you cook for yourself.
This is a serious cultural tourism.
Tunaweza kuwa na hoteli kadhaa ambazo tunaweza fanya kama venye wa China wanafanya, na ni vitu zinaweza letea wananchi wetu faida kubwa sana.
I think for us as a country, it is a matter of not just displaying our intangible cultural elements, but then living in them, bringing them to life in order that our people can enjoy and they are transposed back into time.
It touches their heart, it touches their souls, and that is the very basis of intangible cultural heritage.
DJ Tatua.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
We value your feedback and welcome your comments, queries, and complaints regarding our content. You can get in touch with us via SMS on 22151, call 0719 012 111 or 0732 142 000 or email feedback@standardmedia.co.ke. Our PO Box number is 30080-00100 Nairobi, or deliver to our offices at Standard Group Center, Mombasa Road, Nairobi.
My name is Maria.
Hey, yes, I'm Simon.
My name is CEO Charles Otieno.
I am the Dr. C. And I bring family, love, fashion, culture.
And you know I love some good controversy.
From past lessons to today's story.
I anchor the conversations with distilled wisdom. Let's talk about it.
I will never ever hold back.
Only on Let's Be Real.
Sunday at 10 p.m.
on KTN.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
We have the data around it. We know it's happening. It is a concern, the mental health of individuals. But then again, there is the aspect of stopping it because it can't continue like this. So what are the solutions? And here comes the aspect that you also deal with, which is advocacy and law reform. And with this, it is you engaging stakeholders. So that would be the police, talk about parliament, in ensuring that all this is ended. So when you're discussing this with the police, if you do, or parliament, is the intention in making sure that enforced disappearances is criminalized under the law? And what are they saying?
Interesting. We have this rhetoric vis-a-vis what is being done. So when you speak to them, there's lots of commitment. Initially, there was a lot of commitment that we will do. On 10th of December 2023, the then AG, that was Muturi, did commit in front of a global virtual session that Kenya was going to sign off, ratify the enforced disappearances. Come today, nothing has been done. We have pushed for this. Kenya went through the Universal Periodic Review process in May this year, on the 1st of May in Geneva. Our government was heavily represented, and this process brings about other countries. It's a peer review mechanism. So all the other countries gave Kenya their recommendations. We had given Kenya our recommendations as civil society and other players. And in total, Kenya received, I think, 339 recommendations across many different sectors. What is interesting is that I think Kenya adopted 102 recommendations. They never adopted to ratify enforced disappearances, whereas it was heavily recommended. They did not pick that up.
Why is that?
So we have no idea. It just shows you that there's really no commitment to put in place mechanisms that will stop enforced disappearances. But just hold that a little and go back to the utterances the president of this country himself has made. He's committed and said, under my leadership, there will be no enforced disappearances, there will be no extrajudicial executions. But what has happened?
Well, we all know he lied.
So there's really no goodwill, there's no commitment, and it's actually not even happening in broad daylight. The more we talk about it, the more they are doing it, So I really do not know how to make our government listen, because we have spoken. By the way, the government signed into, we have the Protection Against Torture Act, signed in 2017. They shouldn't be torturing people. They have put it in black and white.
But does it even have to be written down? Isn't it just just a thing that we should know? But human nature dictates that you should be civil and that,
Exactly.
We shouldn't have to have documentation saying that you should not torture another human being.
But now you even have it written, and you've written it yourselves and accepted and committed. You know that killing is wrong, extrajudicial killings are wrong, but we have a policeman killing somebody at close range. And it's still okay. Common sense tells you, and I'm disappointed when I hear comments like the person was arguing or might have said something wrong. And these are people who have a certain level of leadership in this country. So a couple of things. One is Kenya will change the day individual and command responsibility are affected. The day an IG, a deputy IG, a station commanding officer really is jailed for things they have done or failed to stop from happening. And the minute that officer who took the action is actually faced, he faces justice, that is the day things will begin to change. The day we end impunity. Because what we've been telling, leaders and people is that it's okay, you'll get away with it. We have seen a cabinet secretary saying, I will back you up, I will support you, I will cover for you. Kenya belongs to the people. Article 1 of our constitution states clearly that sovereign power belongs to the people. So we need to realize that the people have the power here and that you're only in an office for a short term. Remember, their term of office is coming to an end. And they need to listen to this because we've been singing. Their term of office is coming to an end. When it comes to an end, because right now they're covered by, they're covering each other, yeah? When it comes to an end, they're going to face the law someday because the law is for everybody. It's not for some. We are now seeing a divided country. So they need to start doing what is right. Number 3, they need to start listening. And I'm talking about the political elite. They have to start listening to what people are saying. Because change is driven by people. And when you see thousands of people on the street, there's something that you're doing wrong, because they can't just be going out on the street to make noise. They are giving you a message. And we are not seeing that. We are busy politicking and saying how people are paid to do this and this, when we know that these peaceful protesters just want change.
And neither can it be handled with kiddie gloves either.
Exactly,
right?
Exactly.
So that the world witnessed many a conflict. And out of that, the tenets of international humanitarian law were formed. We know this.
Yes.
And then folks gathered in Geneva and they said, you know what? We have seen too much horror. We have seen too much torture. We have seen too much craziness that comes out as a result of conflict, as a result of state control. And we've seen that human beings are suffering. So what did they do? They came up with the convention, the International Convention of the Protection of All Persons.
Yes.
And
against enforced
disappearances. Right? This one, it was not against torture. It was not against protesting. It was specifically against these enforced disappearances. Because they realized that under these enforced disappearances, all this other nightmare happens. This torture, this sexual torture that we talk about, all of these things happen under that gambit. So they said, no one shall be subjected to enforced disappearance. They said no exceptional circumstances whatsoever, whether a state of war or a threat of war, even a whiff of war. Under that, you cannot. Internal political instability. So whether it's war outside or whether it's things that are happening within your country, or any other public emergency may be invoked as a justification for enforced disappearances. So all of these things, from what I understand, that all of these things that we're talking about, whether somebody or their shadow wrote something on social media, that you cannot then go and pick up that person and disappear them. If you feel that they did something wrong, present them to a court of law and state your case. Should they go through the requisite trial and they found to be guilty of the offense, then they be sentenced according to that. Now, why do I bring in the global perspective? Because nations then, as a result of being part of the United Nations, ratified these protocols and said, we will abide by this. And we will make sure that where our jurisdictions reach, we will make sure that within this jurisdiction, this protocol is practiced, having been manifested. And that's my problem. The rule of law is not adhered to, whether it is internal, whether it is external, whether it is global. But we've collected the data, Grace. We know who has gone. We hear their testimonies. But I think we're dealing with this thing with kiddie gloves, that we don't demand certain things. We suggest. When are we going to get to the place where we say, oh, please don't abduct our people or disappear them forcefully? Or say that you have said that you would abide by this. Why don't you?
I think we have said and taken different actions. I mean, we've had, if you remember last year, there were court summons for the then acting IG.
He showed up on the seventh one.
You see, so actions have been taken, but, and I say this, the regime doesn't seem to care. Disregard to the rule of law. Impunity of the highest order. In fact, our pain right now is that Kenya sits on the Human Rights Council.
Thank you.
How do you sit on the Human Rights Council and you have all these human rights violations you're perpetrating every day, every single day? Tell me a day you've woken up, and there's not a case of an abduction or an extrajudicial killing or torture. There's not a single day. You wake up, today it's so-and-so. You wake up, tomorrow these kind of people have been profiled. So the various things that are happening, and I know that these conversations are going to continue, but we've also taken legal action. I know your next segment will probably discuss that, including, yesterday we submit a petition to make sure that the CS does not sit in that position. It doesn't deserve to lead anybody if he does not even understand the law himself and is a cabinet secretary.
And a lawyer.
And a lawyer for that matter. I mean, why would we want such people in office? And they need to start knowing that Kenyans are serious about change. We really are serious about change. You can't sit in and give a shoot to kill order. And then you wake up and say, I didn't give that order. I mean, in black and white, even police officers themselves have challenged that kind of remark, whether it was an utterance or a remark. It's careless. It's reckless. What are you telling people? So, yeah.
Grace, when you look at all these violations, we have a history in this country, and this is not new to us. Abductions is not something new. Extrajudicial killings not something new. But in your documentation and your forensic analysis, what are the emerging patterns? Because on Wednesday, the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights released a statement, which was an update on the Wednesday demonstrations. And something that caught my eye that we had heard of, but now it was really, really pronounced, is the issue of individual rape cases and gang rape cases, and even attempted gang rape cases. What are your numbers? What are you gathering from the ground when you're doing analysis? What exactly happened on Wednesday's protest and the previous one? What are the patterns you're building?
Yeah. So sexual torture is, again, a form of torture that's very, very, very difficult to report, very difficult to document, because it has its own levels of stigma, fear, and a lot of pain. But as part of the team that was monitoring, we did, and we were the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights, we reported 2 cases of gang rape, 2 cases of individual rape, and an attempted rape.
On Wednesday?
On Wednesday. On Wednesday, it's in black and white. That's part of the report we issued. If you read our statements, we did issue that report. Yes. This was on Wednesday. And the survivors have come up. Some are receiving medical attention. There are other numbers we've had, but we haven't verified, and they haven't come to us. That doesn't mean that they're not there. It just means that it's so difficult for sexual torture to be reported. But here's the thing. When we start using sexual torture as a weapon against our democracy and the fight for justice and rights and the safeguarding of the Constitution, this country has lost it. During the 2007-08 post-election violence, we reported over 600 cases. You're aware of that. IMLU has been working with 208 of these survivors of sexual violence. How many years since 2007-08? They have never recovered. Horrific stories. To date, they cry. They are in pain. Their lives were shattered completely. And when I'm talking, I can tell you, I can see their faces. Because just 3 weeks ago, I was with a team from Mombasa. 3 months ago, we had a team that we brought together because we've been providing psychosocial support and ongoing treatment. And ongoing treatment for fistula, women who got fistula out of that, urine incontinence, women, it's crazy the kind of pain they have. So coming back to 2025, and we start hiring goons, and we start allowing them to operate as security agents, and we give them the protection as police, and I'm going to say that openly, because we have seen a police vehicle with the goons outside. I mean, that's a photo that's everywhere. It's not doctored. It's been proven, it's real. When we do that, it's crazy for this country. So yes, sexual torture is happening. I really, really want to encourage, and I know I say this with a lot of pain. I've worked in gender-based violence for many years. I say this with a lot of pain, but anyone out there who has not gotten support, please find a way of reaching either to ourselves or to the Nairobi County GBV Center. There's a lady known as Roslyn. You can trust her. She is gonna offer services, and you can also seek out services from any of our partner organizations, because it's really important, not so much for reporting, but for treatment, for care, for support.
Grace.
So yes, I really just want to reach out to survivors, and thank you for giving me that opportunity. Those that have come up are being supported. They're being given treatment. And we know for sure a lot more happened. So just to reach out to people, but to tell the government of Kenya, these are the crimes. These crimes are going to take people to places they don't want to go. These crimes are going to take people to places they don't want to go. These crimes are going to take people to places they don't want to go. These crimes are going to take people to places they don't want to go. These crimes are going to take people to places they don't want to go. These crimes are going to take people to places they don't want to go. These crimes are going to take people to places they don't want to go. These crimes are going to take people to places they don't want to go. These crimes are going to take people to places they don't want to go. These crimes are going to take people to places they don't want to go. These crimes are going to take people to places they don't want to go. These crimes are going to take people to places they don't want to go. These crimes are going to take people to places they don't want to go. These crimes are going to take people to places they don't want to go. These crimes are going to take people to places they don't want to go. These crimes are going to take people to places they don't want to go. These crimes are going to take people to places they don't want to go. These crimes are going to take people to places they don't want to go. These crimes are going to take people to places they don't want to go. These crimes are going to take people to places they don't want to go. People may have gotten out of ICC in the past, but I'm telling you, there are other jurisdictions. ICC is still an option. There are many other options that Kenyans are considering, and we are not going to allow this country to go back to those dark days. We cannot go that way. These are young people, by the way. The cases, all the five cases that we have now, they're all young people.
But Grace, we can talk about them as victims. I hate using that term. But you can't also talk about justice without looking at who is the perpetrator.
Absolutely.
In this case, who are the perpetrators?
Okay. The question of perpetrators is twofold. The people who have done that are primary perpetrators, the ones who committed the act, and they'll be found. But the person who allows for this and gives positions, allows it to happen, is a key perpetrator as well. And they'll face the law. They should face the law, and they will face the law because somebody allowed it to happen. You know, when you poured out those goons, by the way, you remember, and I thank the media the week before had said that from the reports that were being given, goons were being encouraged to target who? Women. There was that already, and they had been told, have knives and go and target women. It was already planned. So right from the planning to the execution, they have to face the law.
So, Grace, when you talk about all this, there is a key stakeholder in this entire conversation, which is the security agencies, the police. And if you speak to police officers, even as you speak right now, they have objected to the order of shooting to kill from the cabinet secretary. The police officers who are doing a great, good deal to citizens, but then there are those who just are rogue. Let's point it out. But when you have a discussion with police officers, what are they telling you? What is their position on the orders that they are given? And then also, let's even take it further in terms of giving proposals to police in helping deal with this issue, which is all about dealing with the curriculum. Yesterday, Chief Justice Emeritus talked about need to change the curriculum and give more emphasis on the Bill of Rights. Is that an area that we should be looking towards?
So interesting things around working with the police. We actually convened the police reforms working group that's done really quite a bit in regards to positioning police issues and welfare, positioning reforms, and also pushing for accountability. Now, when we talk to individual police, and I'm glad, really glad that there are police officers who've come up in the open and said, we cannot do that. We cannot take that shoot to kill order. So, I mean, I'm just not speaking. They have spoken for themselves. I belong to the school of thought that actually agrees we have some bad apples and we have some good apples in the same bag. I know there are people who say we don't care about the bad apples and the good apples. Everybody belongs to the service. But really, we must appreciate those officers who've gone out of their way to do what is right. And I have good examples, some that we work with through the community policing, agenda and committees. Some who have openly called out for change, but they are so threatened by this command chain about speaking against. But when we are talking to them as individuals, they will tell us, and they have told us, Wangeshi, continue with what you're doing because we completely agree with you. This police brutality, this police excesses should never be, but people obey, they take to what they have been told to do. We know that there's infiltration. We know that even within the police, it's not all the time that it's just the National Police Service that is manning, crowd control or public order management during the protests. So they're also really at a bad place. Some of them are at a bad place. Some are saying this has to stop. Some actually give evidence. Some will position and pass on information to you and say, please, just check on this. But we don't have investigative officers, powers. So we will still rely on the formal justice mechanism to take place. So what am I trying to say? I'm saying that the police reform agenda must be fast-tracked. I do completely agree with CJ Emeritus that the curriculum needs to be, and there's been an attempt to make sure that the curriculum is more human rights oriented, it's more people-centered. I want to challenge the IG because I've been in a sitting with the IG himself where he has said that his push and his legacy would be a people-centered policing. He has said that, and I see through him, and I think he means well, and I think he's committed to that. But somehow he's not making it happen. The question is to ask him and to indulge him, why isn't he making it happen? And then this thing of committing and saying just the day before the protest that we will make sure everything goes well, there will be no violence, we will support, they'll play their role. And then the next day you wake up and the first thing you find on the streets is all these, they're barricaded, and you're like, already they have given a bad message, when it's not meant to be. So change has to happen at the police level. We do know there are issues around their welfare. There are issues about, priorities. There are issues about recruitment, promotions, a lot of corruption. If these things are dealt with, the officers will be much happier. A lot of them don't get promoted. The ones that get promoted are people who, number one, get into the force, to the service, not because they have what it takes to get there, but because somebody has pushed them or because they have paid their way through. So right there, recruitment is a serious issue. Promotion, yes.
I shudder to think of, very quickly because our time is running out, but I shudder to think of a situation where we don't get the lid on this thing. But it is not just brick and mortar, but that it's the very insides of individuals that need to be dealt with. Because many a conflict around the world where we see the devastating effects of this direction in which we are headed. And what needs to happen today, Grace?
What needs to happen today, number one, for those cases that are ongoing around police brutality, use of force, they need to be hastened. They need to, the judiciary just needs to work around them. I know the delays are not even necessary so much on the judiciary, but ODPP, we really must call out the ODPP. It needs, because IPOA has stated that their files they have passed on to the ODPP. Those files have not moved. We are finding a lot of games being played within the ODPP. So the first thing is for ODPP to do what they're supposed to do. It's to make sure that those files, they start prosecuting and cases get adjudicated. That's one. Number two, command responsibility. And I'm really going to insist on this. When an officer in charge of a command at whatever level issues certain instructions, they need to know that they'll be held to, account for them. And so let us stop sacrificing the small lambs. Albert's case is a good example that in as much as it's going on, we know that the real culprits are not even being investigated. It's in the public domain. Sure. I can say that. So we need to start doing what is right. Stop sacrificing, the small people. Number two, it's about changing of attitudes and behavior. Some of these things are common sense. Why would you use live ammunition on young people who are protesting? They are unarmed, and then you give protection to goons.
But they can do that if the purpose is just to kill them.
Exactly. So then they need to tell us that they have changed the constitution of this country. Because, why do we have such a beautiful constitution that gives so much light and hope and the love that you talked about, the proverb into this country? We have one of the best constitutions in the world. But look at what is happening. We are killing our own constitution. So let's safeguard it.
A lot needs to happen, and it needs to happen now. Grace Wangeshi is the Executive Director of the Independent Medical Legal Unit and has been our guest this hour. Tough conversations to have, but necessary ones to have. Thank you for being here this morning, and we look forward to keeping these conversations in the limelight. Asante, at 8:02.